Welcome everyone to ThursdAI. Hello, hello, hello. My name is Alex Volkov. I'm an AI evangelist with weights and biases, and I'm your host for today. One of your hosts. We also have Wolfram here. Hey, Wolfram, welcome.
Bonjour, everyone. Hello.
How are you, man? How are you doing?
It has been a great week, I think, not just from AI perspective, but some acceleration perspective as well.
Oh yeah, we should absolutely talk about this, right? There's a AI summit in Paris. There's a bunch of. I actually have this in my notes, so we're gonna definitely cover the fact that the United States government is EAC or whatever we call them, and the VP speech on the AI as well. But also, yeah, a bunch of generally good AI news as well. I have a story to start with, right? So I'll just do the intro for everyone who's new here. If you're new here, welcome. We have been recording the show live for the past. We're coming up on 2 years, folks. March 14th. Write this down. In a month, we're going to have 2 years of the show weekly. And I think we only skipped like 3 episodes during those 2 years. A 2-year anniversary is coming up. And if you're new here, we are covering everything that happened in the world of LLMs, VLMs, sound and audio, video and image diffusions, agents. Yeah, we're starting to cover agents as well. And we often have folks who worked on the releases that we cover, and which is great. And actually today is one such day, so we'll chat with a few folks about their releases or their adjacent releases. I already see Zach in the crowd. I see Chan in the crowd as well. So that's gonna be awesome. Stick around for that. If you are missing any part of the show, we're usually here for 2 hours. We are also live on every podcast platform that you follow your podcast. So whether it be Spotify or Apple or whatever you get your podcast, ThursdAI, after we record, is getting edited by your truly and then also gets posted on every platform there is. So you don't have to miss a beat. Because it's a big show, in the podcast, if you have a podcast player that has chapters, use those chapters. You can skip forward to listen to a very specific thing that you'd like. With this intro, I will also say we have a very high 5-star rating on both platforms. Please contribute as well. Give us 5-star if you are there. It really helps the show. This is a good way to support us. Wolfram, you want to hear my AI going rogue story?
Yes. You told something that you wanted to talk about something, and I was very excited. So that is the story, yeah?
Okay, last week after the show, I don't believe we covered this on the show, but I often, especially when Thursday happens and there's a bunch of news, after we record the show, a bunch of stuff happens. So I often add links to the newsletter, folks. So actually, this is a good prompt if you're listening to us. If you don't want to miss everything that happened after the show, that the Thursday newsletter is a great way to get those links. I installed a new app. You know how I love installing apps, playing with AI. I installed this app called Reply from Knox. Shout out to Molly. Cantillon, and I installed this app. It's a Mac app. It connects to your messages, and it runs a local AI. You can choose a local or not a local AI. It runs a local AI to then reply in your stead, right? So basically to stop ghosting your friends on messages, okay? So I installed this app. It's pretty cool. The first thing this app did is read through my text. Again, everything's local, right? So everything's fine. I don't know. They're probably running some llama or something. Read through my text, analyze a profile of my conversation with each person that I talk with so that it'd be able to reply as me, okay? So far, amazing. So two things happened. One, the beginning of the app, once it finds all these things out, it summarizes you and that person's conversation. If you think about this, your messages are very representative of how you behave with this person. And so I had a little bit of a thing with my ex in the chat with my co-parent. And so basically it analyzed and gave me a psychoanalysis of how I'm being an asshole. How both of us are being assholes to each other and how we should put the kids first. And you know how you go to a therapist and you ask for therapy and you're ready for this? I don't know if any of you experienced therapy without being ready for this. I don't know if anybody like experienced AI just being absolutely taking a third party, not because when you prompt ChatGPT, you can prompt it to be in your stead, basically in your prompts. Was I an asshole? ChatGPT doesn't want to harm you. So yeah, this AI wasn't prompted by me. It was prompted by somebody else. So it basically gave me an analysis of like where I was the asshole, where she was like the asshole, and like how we both should focus on the kids instead of just doing the regular co-parenting. So this is number one. I got this as a gut punch. I was like, fuck, I need to reimagine my choices. So that was great. That was incredible. And usually we're okay. This one conversation, for some reason, it analyzed that. It was incredible. So then, okay, I'm sitting with this. I'm like, okay, I'll give this reply a try. And so I have this AI that auto replies for me, or it prepares drafts for me, right? So it doesn't send them. It prepares draft for me. As you might imagine in the AI, some of them are like spot on, some of them just like ridiculously out of place. There's absolutely no relation to what needs to happen. And I have this app running on my Mac, and I'm just like, I'm out and about. I went out, etc. And then I start receiving messages from friends with question marks, or like, what? What do you mean? I was like, what's going on? And so these messages don't contextualize for me what was going on. Apparently, this app had a bug. Okay, this AI went rogue, and so instead of showing me, oh, I'm about to reply with this message and this message, this AI just started replying out of the blue for those people. And so some of my friends got very interesting texts. So if you're listening to this and we're mutuals and I have you in messages, if you received weird messages from me, I'm sorry, mea culpa. This is my AI went rogue. But the most incredible thing is, out of the blue, I get a text from my co-parent, which is like, you probably meant to send this to somebody else, but my day is going very well, thank you. So this AI, like on Monday before, just gave me absolute shit about not being a person that needs to be, focused on the kids. Also decided to smooth things out and send her like this nice message. Hey, how's your day going? Which is not, we don't talk like this. Like after the divorce, we just like focus on the kids. It just sent her this nice message. She replied with a smiley. So like this AI told me, like analyzed, and then also smoothed the things over, which I found just like absolutely incredible. So I just wanted to kick off the story. Could have gone way, way worse, right? So this rogue AI thing could have gone way worse. So yeah, this is my AI going rogue story.
Amazing.
But I found it just incredible. I got a psychoanalysis out of the blue.
Completely new field you opened up here with not just the psychoanalysis, but also the counselor that even talks to the people and tries to smooth things over.
And I didn't ask for it. Look, it just like randomly sent her like a nice message. So it decided after the conversation that like it should like randomly send the thing. And the weird thing was it wasn't a reply. That's the thing. Like the app is called Reply, right? Like it's supposed to reply to people so you don't leave them hanging. This wasn't the reply. This was out of the blue. She got this message. I was like, maybe I should leave it running. We'll see. We'll see what else. Maybe maybe I'll sell my house. I don't know. Anyway, this is my AI going rogue story. I thought it was like super cool.
Do you have time for a quick anecdote? I could tell you something.
Yeah, please.
I did something like that with my mother, where I was using, I think it was Claude. I did use an AI and to reply to her WhatsApp messages because she was a bit afraid of AI, I have to say. So I wanted to tell her, oh, it's not a big deal. So she talked to my AI, and then she said, oh, I found out that it was not you, but the AI, because it talked so much more. My messages usually were too short. And when she said she's afraid of AI, the AI told her in my name, oh, come on, you have gone through a lot of technological changes and you have your family to rely on, and I will help you through this, which I'm doing, of course. So that was very nicely put. And I think it alleviated her fears. And I'm not doing the impersonation stuff anymore.
That's that's absolutely awesome. I think that we'll have AIs that help people like fear AI less. I hope, and this is why we're here, folks. If you're missing any part of the show, we're going by AI evangelists, and the reason why is because many people are fearful of AI, and we don't believe they should be. Welcome, Nissan. How are you, man?
Hey, I'm good. There was like a snowstorm or blizzard last night, and people were complaining about being stuck indoors.
Can you take care of that before I come to Toronto next week?
Canada.
You'll be fine. Most of the city, at least the financial district, is pretty weatherproof, and they've built tunnels in between all the buildings and all the basements. So you can just walk around all day and not go outside at all. You can go all the way. Yes, it'll be fine. You'll be fine.
All right, folks, the reason I'm mentioning this is because we'll talk about this later, but if you're in Toronto and you're listening to the show, we're doing 2 workshops with ThursdAI in Toronto. That will be next Sunday and next Monday. And also, if you're in New York for AI Thinkers, we're also going to be there. So come say hi. All right, you guys ready to start the TLDR? Let's start with TLDR. There's a huge amount of stuff to talk about. We'll just pull this up and then, let's run through it. Big week. I started, there's a few moments on ThursdAI when I like, okay, not a lot of things happened. And then I start to actually compile the things that happened. And it turns out that we have like more content than we can contain in the show. So I think the same thing happened here. So we'll start with this one. And we'll actually have Zach from Nomic. Hopefully, Zach, you're still with us somewhere. Yeah, Zach is here. Let me pull you up. We'll start with in open source. We had Nomic Embed release text v2, which is the first embedding mixture of experts, which is super cool. And Zach is going to join us soon to to chat about what this means in the world of embeddings. It's awesome. Alan AI, friends from Alan AI, shout out to Nathan. By the way, did you guys hear Nathan on Lex Friedman? It was so awesome. I just like barely started to finish this. 5 hours of Nathan from Alan AI, who's here, a friend of the pod, and Dylan Patel from Semi-Analysis talking to Lex Friedman about everything. Absolutely incredible podcast. You should all listen to it. So Alan also released an iOS app. And it's a standalone app that has built-in, the AI built-in, so you don't have to send it everywhere. It's pretty cool. And then also they released a new Tulu, which is also awesome. We're going to briefly mention this. Grok with a Q. We haven't talked about Grok with a Q in a while. Grok, the fast inference service, they added Quen models, and including R1 Distill. So you now can run R1 Distill from Quen at around like 1,000 tokens per second. It's like ridiculously fast. It's super cool. And also lands on OpenRouter. For many developers, since Grok was announced, you weren't able to get like higher rate limits, etc. So now Grok is also on OpenRouter. So we'll mention this briefly. I also saw a new model released, Agentica Deepscaler 1.5B. It beats O1 Preview on math. I will say this slowly again. There's a 1.5 billion parameter model, which is like a fine tune with reasoning, that beats O1 Preview on math using reinforcement learning techniques for $4,500. We've seen more and more of these like replications of RL techniques. This is another one, but this one is super cool. And also, we have a Modern BERT. You guys remember we talked about Modern BERT? I don't know if Benjamin's going to join us or not, but hopefully at some point. Modern BERT is now, there's an instruct version of Modern BERT, which is a encoder only, but still instruct version. And it matches Quen 0.5b, which is pretty cool. So we can mention this as well. If Benjamin joins, he can give us more detail. In the big companies, LLMs, APIs, it was a quiet week because most of the folks were, at least most of the Western AI folks were in the AI summit in Paris, and many people were there. The one announcement, the big one that we have to talk about is the roadmap that OpenAI announced. Sam Altman went on Twitter yesterday, on X yesterday, and basically said, hey, well, GPT-5 is not coming anymore. It's not going to be GPT-5. It's going to be GPT 4.5, or whatever Orion was, is going to be 4.5. And then 5 is going to be a hybrid model that's also reasoning. O3 is dead as well. Basically, a very interesting discussion about a public roadmap, which we haven't seen from OpenAI for a minute. Interesting why it comes right now. They also released Model Spec V2. Model Spec is their open instructions how these models should work and think, which is super, super cool. I hope we have chance to talk about Model Spec V2. It's really awesome. Then, in that Paris summit, I saw one of the most forward-thinking speeches in AI from a government ever, from Vice President J.D. Vance, and the speech in the AI summit. And he's basically, let's stop regulating. Let's go. Let's fucking go. It was surreal to see this from a government representative, especially from a vice president. We have to cover the speech. And I believe that, I don't know if you watched this, but it's quite something to see a government official talk about, hey, let's stop regulating. Let's win this war of AI. Also in big news, Cerebras. You guys remember Cerebras, the LPU, they have this massive chip. They now power Perplexity. So if you are using Perplexity, now flies at 1,200 tokens per second. This is crazy. Like Perplexity Sonar, their specific LLM for search, is now powered by Cerebras and it's like 1,200 tokens per second. It matches Google now on speed. It's crazy. And also just recently, like breaking news from Anthropic, Claude is coming. The information just posted that Claude is coming and it's going to be a combined model. Like it's going to be LLM and reasoning model. You'll be able to decide how much reasoning you want to give it, which is also very, very awesome. In this week's Buzz, the category where I update you on everything related to weights and biases, and honestly, ThursdAI as well. We have a new feature called dataset editing. I'll show you. It's pretty cool as you store eval datasets in Weave. But also, we have 2 workshops in Toronto, Sunday, Monday. I think we're still allowing people to register, although great registration numbers, but we're still allowing people to register. Vision and video, Adobe finally released Firefly Video. You guys remember Firefly from Adobe? They now have a video model, image to video and text to video as well. Pretty cool. So shout out to all the folks who worked on this, and we'll take a look. In voice and audio, I think we have a lot of stuff this week. So first of all, YouTube now expands AI dubbing in languages to all creators. And that's super cool. So basically, no language barriers anymore. AI dubbing is here. Not only that, Meta released Audiobox Aesthetics. It's a quality assessment for speech, music, and sound. This is like the first model that compares to diffusion models, where diffusion models basically had a thing that decides whether or not images look good. Now Meta released something like this for speech and music, which is awesome, which means like all of the TTS that we have is going to get better because of this. And also there's a new TTS called Zonos from Zifra. And we talked about Zifra before, and we can take a listen to this and compare this to like Coco or something. In tools and others, I don't think there's anything in AI art and diffusion world, nothing super interesting. But emergent in tools and others, there's a new research called Emergent Values AI finds that AI have explicit utility functions for people, and they value people from places better, like higher than other people. And for some reason, Nigerian people valued as like 8 US people. One Nigerian person is valued like 8 US people. I gotta wonder if it's related to somehow to a lot of Nigerian folks sitting and doing RLHF on behalf of Scale. So we're gonna cover this. LM Studio lends support for speculative decoding. Finally, shout out to Yagil and LM Studio. It's incredible. If you're not using LM Studio, you should. But if you are using LM Studio, you know that there's a way to speed up inference with speculative decoding. Now, let's say you use Qwen, and then you have Qwen 72B, and then Qwen 1.5B. You can use speculative decoding to speed up significantly. And so now LM Studio supports this, and it's awesome. And one last shout out for our podcast, Noam Shazir and Jeff Dean, both. Noam Shazir, the co-creator, the main author, I think, on Transformers paper, and Jeff Dean, who's been in Google for a long time. They went on Dwarkesh podcast, and I'm going to listen to this after what we talk about. So I think this is everything that I have. Wolfram, Nistan, anything that I missed? Folks in the audience, anything that I missed? Please let me know. And then we're going to start with open source. Open source AI, let's get it started. So the first thing that we want to talk about is Nomic Embed V2. Welcome, Zach.
Hey, Alex. Thanks for having me.
How are you, man?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm very good. So you have an announcement this week. Would you like to just, first of all, maybe introduce yourself briefly to the folks who have never seen you before, and then let's talk about what you guys released and why it's cool.
Yeah, sounds good. Hey, I'm Zach. I'm a machine learning engineer at Nomic AI. I've mostly been focused on embeddings in general. And yeah, this week we released the follow-up to Nomic Embed V1, which is Nomic Embed V2, which is the first general purpose mixture of experts. Bit of a mouthful, embedding model. So it supports about 100 languages and outperforms models at its parameter size and is competitive with other larger multilingual embedding models. Yeah, I was really excited to venture a little bit off the beaten path and try something new for the embedding model world. I think with the rise of agents and people using things like Cursor and assisted AI coding editors, embeddings are playing a much bigger role day in and day out. So having better embedding models can only help us code better or help us in the future. So I was really excited to try and improve upon them. And yeah, we open sourced pretty much everything from the training data, the model weights, the training code, and we have a technical report that just hit archive today. Yeah, was really excited to also contribute back to the community.
That's so awesome. So first of all, shout out on all the work that you guys did and the work that you did in this. And the technical report will definitely add to the show notes for folks who wanna read. Can you give us like one, maybe, I don't know, lesson or one thing you learned, or I don't know, if you want to do a bitter lesson from the technical report to like excite folks to go and read this?
The bitter lesson always with contrastively trained models is you cannot escape a big batch. You always need a big batch size. I think as we've seen in language models, applying more compute tends to help. And I think that's one of the exciting things that we showed here. And I think there's a lot of really cool avenues on top of this that I'm excited about exploring in the next few months.
That's super awesome. We usually talk about embedding models, but some folks maybe are new. So embedding models are used to basically embed text, or I guess everything, but mostly for text, for retrieval generated purposes. And you guys have been in the space for a long time, but this is the first mixture of experts model, at least the first that we've seen. Could you give us a little bit of an explanation, like why you guys decided on a mixture of experts model and what are the benefits?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think so. In the last 6 or 7 months, we'd seen a lot of other multilingual models or English models being trained and released. And one pattern that I kept seeing was people just training bigger and bigger models, basically going from BERT base size model to BERT large to 1B to even 7B parameter models. There's two big downsides from that. One is the obvious inference cost. If it's a bigger model, it's going to take longer to run. And the second downside is as your model size increases, generally your embedding dimension increases. So even just going from a BERT base to a BERT large, you go from 768 dimensions to 1024. So one of the things that I was really interested in is, okay, can we train a model that performs as well as a model twice as big that has 25% of the embedding dimension is 25% smaller. So you get the bonus of better performance, but you also get this free storage, which was the impetus for using mixture of experts. So we're trading a little bit of inference time memory and training compute to train a model with a mixture of experts, but we get this really nice added bonus of 25% storage when you're using these embedding models. And this really comes into play when you have millions and millions of documents. You can save tens to hundreds of gigabytes, which means a lot for many enterprises.
Yeah. There's also less active parameters during inference as well, right? So the model is 475 million, but the inference are only 305 million, which is, I looked at this and it seemed a little bit higher than the usual MOE. Could you talk about like how usually like we get MOEs for 32 billion parameters, and if it's an MOE, then like around 8 are active because it's a couple of like two experts. You have 8 experts with top 2 routing, right? Could you talk about, it's fairly close to the total parameter count, or at least that's what like I looked at. Could you talk about what's happening with the active parameters?
Yeah, it's a good question. So one thing that we did that might be a little bit different than some of the other LLMs is that we only use MOE layer on every other layer. So the total number of parameters that we're adding is quite small, but otherwise it's still the same number of active parameters. When compared to BERT base and a BERT large, instead of using an MOE layer at every layer, we're taking it at every other layer. So we're not adding as many parameters, which is what you tend to see with larger models, right? Like you're adding a multiple of the original model's parameters, but here we're only adding a subset.
Awesome. Zach, thank you so much for coming and talking to us about this and applaud your effort, especially because you guys released everything, including training. One last thing that maybe I'll ask you is the question of, I saw a conversation with Benjamin from Modern BERT. Do you have plans to move this on Modern BERT? What's your general take on like that whole effort and to switch to that backbone?
Yeah, I think that'd be definitely interesting to try, especially because Modern BERT is so popular now. One downside is I don't think there's a multilingual Modern BERT, which is one of the reasons we didn't use it in the first place. But
just English only? Mm-hmm.
Yes, at least that's my understanding. I'm not sure if there's plans to have a multilingual Modern BERT, but yeah, definitely would be interested. And yeah, everybody that worked on that project, awesome work. So it'd be fun to do some collaboration.
Absolutely. Folks, give Zach a follow. Zach always releases very interesting things and talks about embedding models and other stuff as well. Zach, thank you for coming up. We're going to move on. We have a bunch of stuff to talk about, but shout out to you and the team at Nomic for doing some very interesting off the beaten path work for embeddings.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you. And definitely, folks, give Zach a follow. All right, folks, we're moving on to the next thing that we want to chat. And Nisna LDJ, if you guys have looked at this, welcome to chime in. AI released Olmo-E, which is on iOS. Like we talked about, so this is the second MOE that we're mentioning, right? Olmo from AI is like their big like flagship model, right? So there's Tulu, the small one, and Olmo, the big one. And we've chatted about Olmo with Nathan from AI. And now they released Olmo-E as an iOS, as a standalone app that you can download. Sorry, Android folks. Maybe at some point it's coming as well. They released this iOS app, and basically this is now running fully, completely on device with no concerns that any data or anything is getting sent anywhere, like in China or anything like this. So definitely worth giving this a try. I have downloaded this, but I haven't opened. I didn't have a second. Question for folks, if you have a chance, and if not, anybody in the audience, if you have a chance and play with this.
I've tried the original model. I've not tried the app, but architecture and the setup of the original model is actually very well fitting for what you want to run on the device. Because if I believe I have this right, it is the Olmo-E 1 billion active, 7 billion parameters total. So it will take up, if you're running it 4-bit, it will take up 3.5 gigs of space. And you also need a bit more, so you'll be fitting within the iOS limits. But it only has 1 billion active parameters. So it runs just as fast as Llama 1B, but uses up more memory. And this, I think, is the ideal thing. But there are other ways that it was trained in there, which would make it a lot faster to run on a mobile device. But yeah, if you're doing edge AI, the way that this model is built is pretty ideal for that.
Not only that, they also fully open sourced like the toolkit for researchers.
That oh yes,
Absolutely, like the whole like iOS code I think is also open sourced, and you can test your own models, etc. And you can integrate Olmo in other iOS applications. I think that's like very dope. Like everything from AI gets released fully open sourced, and this is not an exception. And I just got a shout out to the extent, like you guys know, we're in the open source segment of ThursdAI. We shout out like these things. This is incredible to see everything from AI. So if you haven't downloaded, give it a shout. If you are interested in adding local edge AI into your applications, this is a very good way to try and go about this. Absolutely worth mentioning. Let's move on. We have a bunch of other stuff. Let's mention super quickly, this is a mention, we don't have to go deeply about this, but Grok with a Q, our friends from Grok, they have released Quen models. We've added Quen models, and I think that I saw our friend Junyang in the audience, but it's probably late, but we can shout it out for them. So Grok now runs Quen, and it runs not only the Quen models themselves, but also the Quen distill model from R1, and this flies. So for folks who are take a look. Quen 2.5b, 32b. If you ask it a question, hey, how are you? I don't know, for folks who are watching. By the way, if you're listening to us and you want to watch, the tab to the top of the space, thanks to WNB Weave for co-hosting, the video is attached there. So if you want to switch and take a look at what we're doing, Grok flies at 394 tokens per second, which is insane. Absolutely insane. Like you ask it questions, just build me an iOS app. That's probably not going to work, but let's see. And it just absolutely flies with almost 400 tokens per second. So shout out to folks on this. They also have DeepSeek Distill Quen, also 32B. So we can see the thinking tokens like just like stream. Let's take a look at how fast this is. Hey, I usually love asking reasoning models for hey, and then send.
The important thing here, it is now it's interesting that Grok is now offering 130K context with this one for the R132B.
Model?
For the 32Bs in general.
Yeah. So I asked it just now 9.9 or 9.11, the famous question, and I've got an answer that's 9.9 is bigger than 9.11, but I got it within 1 second, and it thought for almost 400 output tokens and like 386 tokens per second. So as you guys remember, we talked about reasoning being very favorable for these hyper, like super fast providers, and the Grok and Cerebras, like all of them now stepping in with R1, and you can get a lot out of them with the speed. Anything else you guys want to mention about? Oh, yeah. There's another thing. Grok finally lets you add, they have a tier where you can put a credit card and pay as you go. So finally they have, everybody was complaining that Grok is like amazing, but they can't put it in production because the rate limits were low, etc. Grok now allows rate limits, higher rate limits, you can reach out to them, but also they are now part of Open Router as well. So now if you go to, no, there's no models, but if you go to Distill 32B, yeah, Grok is now part of the, or it's supposed to be, I don't see it here, but part of the providers that they've joined, but not probably for R1. So they're now an Open Router as well, which is great. Go ahead, Nissan.
I want to say something because there's been a lot of back and forth talk between us included that have been skeptic about the hardware and stuff. At the end of the day, they're shipping inference, and it looks like they did go to production. All those criticisms about how it's too many chips and they have little SRAM and it's not efficient and blah, blah, blah. At the end of the day, they are shipping very fast inference, and you can buy it, and it looks like they are scaling it. So they are providing the market with what it needs in this case. So, yeah, just wanted to know.
I'll also say, LDJ, go ahead. Do you have a comment here?
Yeah, well, maybe it's better for you to say because it was going to be like slightly tangential, but I was going to say.
Yeah, sure. So I will say that not only they're shipping, finally you're able to get better rate limits. And if you go to something like Open Router, you also can double your rate limits. I posted about this on my feed. Basically, if you add your Grok API keys to OpenRouter, you're able to then double your rate limits. It's like a hidden secret because OpenRouter has an integration with Grok on the backend. So basically, it'll fall back to your keys, but will serve to their keys. So you pay to two places, but you're able to do double the rate limits. Let's go on a small tangent, LJ.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we talked about it last week, but there is Mistral partnered. I think it's either with Grok or Cerebrus. And now for their official chat system, they have, I think maybe it's Cerebrus, but yeah, they're partnered
Yeah.
with. Yeah, now they have 1,100 tokens per second. I think it's with their 24B model, I want to say, or maybe their larger model. But yeah, like really insane speeds. They even have a sort of like artifacts type feature, I think, where you could have the code pulled up on a side panel, and then you can also have it rendered and previewed even in that side panel, similar to ChatGPT Canvas or Anthropic artifacts.
Yeah. We did not cover this because it came during the show. So you're absolutely right. We should at least mention this. I mention this in a newsletter. The chat from Mistral has gotten like a bunch of updates last week. One of them is Cerebrus powered, which is like it runs 1,000 tokens per second, or at least it should. I saw it one time and I asked it to like, hey, build me an app. And they have this like canvas thing, which I think LDG, that's what you're referring to. You can say, build me a calculator that makes sounds every click. Something like this. And then you press on this and then boom. Are you guys, if you're watching, this is like a calculator appeared. Just literally just appeared.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make sounds. So you can say, it doesn't make sounds, make it make sounds. And then just like immediate. Do you see this? This is crazy.
This might be CodeStrahl or a mixture of CodeStrahl and 123B. I don't know what they're doing in the background, but the Cerebrus inference is actually faster when it comes to this class of accelerators.
Yeah. And I think when you're doing code stuff like this too, like messing around with artifacts or like canvas type systems, and you're wanting to like quickly iterate on something, you're wanting to give feedback, fix bugs, like this is just a way better experience than what you would usually have through cloud artifacts or canvas rendering. I think they mentioned with Mistral that they support fill in the middle as well. I think if it only needs to edit, let's say like a couple lines in the whole file, then it has the ability to do that from what I heard.
Yeah, they have the support, but for some reason their canvas does not support it. So like right now we're watching it rewrite every line. Not only that, if you guys are watching with this, for those of you who are just listening, the first 3 attempts of mine, we saw a flash and then the whole file was rewritten with 1,000 tokens per second. But now this one is line by line, basically. It looks like they're falling back to, oh, we got sounds. Okay, you guys can't hear this, but we now finally got sounds because like I asked it to create sounds with WebAudio AI. So basically, if you go to the chat and you type and just like things just appear, which is just incredible. It's very similar to the V0 type people. LDJ, thanks for bringing this up. So this is not in the open source. Let's go back to open source a little bit and talk about, okay, we covered Grok, we covered OpenRouter. The last 2 things I want to cover in open source before we move on is Agentica's DeepScaler 1.5. And I want to see if Chan can join us. Chan, if you want to join us here or on video, let me send you a request. Because, let's see, because this is incredible. Let me switch and show this one. Agentica, a company, released a review, like a new model called DeepScaler 1.5, which I believe is a Qwen 1.5 fine-tune, I believe. Let me see. You guys know I love the history of fine tunes in Hugging Face. Since they added this, is like very cool. So yeah, the base model for this was DeepSeek R1 Distill, Qwen 1.5B, which is a mouthful. And this is a fine tune called DeepScaler 1.5. And the absolute highlight is this 1.5B model beats O on math using RL with $4,500. There's a bunch of other highlights there, and I want to welcome Chan to talk to us about this. Chan, welcome.
Remember last year, Karpathy was saying that the models are going to get down to like maybe 1B is all you need. And isn't it insane how fast we're getting to that goal?
Yep.
Because we were all pretty optimistic and bullish on that, even way before that. You should only really need like a 1 or 2B. But we're not actually expected to just start happening this fast. So this is pretty interesting.
So welcome, Chan. Welcome. Feel free to introduce yourself. I think it's your first time here on the show.
Hi, everyone. Is my mic working?
Yes, we can hear you fine.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Alex, for inviting me to the show. Just to be clear, I'm not affiliated with DeepSeeker team in any ways. I'm just became an instant online fan.
Yeah. Why did you become a fan?
So,
What was so interesting to you?
so I was looking around the space of reasoning models for a while, mainly because of the Kaggle competition, AMO. If you haven't heard about that, just check it out. It's really fun. It's basically a competition where you have to build an AI, a reasoning model, and perform inference with very limited compute. But let's talk about the main thing today, the DeepSeeker model. So it's really crazy. It achieves 42% pass at 1 on AME 24, which basically means if you give the model only one chance at every problem, it will solve 42% of them.
AIME is competition math for folks who don't follow.
It's the second stage of math competitions. It's basically before the nationals. So it's a big deal. And just to compare with the O1 preview by OpenAI, it is able only to reach 40% if you give it only one try.
This is crazy.
But it gets better because, first of all, this model is only 1.5 billion parameters, which is like tiny.
Highlight what you're saying right now. O1 preview, the biggest model before O1 and O3, they released like the biggest model from OpenAI, like the first reasoner, the thing that they worked 2 years to start, like from 2023. Noam Brown, like all millions of dollars of compute. O1 preview, this like huge, we don't know how big this model is, how well it reasons. We didn't even get the tokens for that. Only gets like around 40 on AIME 2024, which is like incredible difficult math questions. And now this 1.5 billion parameters I can fit in my pocket. I can run on the toaster. Actually blink and it runs. Now beats this in one pass, which means just basically one pass, right? Like it doesn't try again, etc. It just thinks for a long time and just like out spits in the answer, correct?
Yeah, some folks even made a mobile app for that. Like basically it can run on your mobile phone, which is crazy.
This is insane. And if it runs for 32, I see it gets to 76% of. So those are percentages, right? Like out of the whatever questions.
Yeah, basically, if you give it more tries and do majority voting between tries, then on AME 24, it will get to almost 60%, like 59% ish, compared to 53% the DeepSeek Distill Quen 1.5B.
This is also one thing to mention, right? This is a fine tune from the distilled version of DeepSeek onto Quen 1.5B. Yeah, it is a mouthful, so I'll tell this to folks. When DeepSeek released R1 models, they released the huge 670 something plus MOE models, R1 and R10. They also took that knowledge, distilled it down on top of Quen models, right?
I'm interested to actually try this benchmark out as you start quantizing the model more and more. It'd be interesting to see how much it gets at 4-bit or 3-bit and when it completely starts to fail. Can you tell us a bit more how this is benchmarked, or how people can run it? Because again, this looks pretty ideal because on even smaller devices at 4-bit, it would only need like 700, 800 megabytes of RAM. And if that can pass a math Olympiad with 800 megabytes, that's going to be pretty nuts. So yeah, can you tell us just a little bit more about like the benchmarks and how you guys went by doing this?
Okay, so the way I benchmark it is just I just have a VLM instance and run it as it is on the math questions. That's it, and just parse the answers.
Tell me one thing: the difference between 2024 and 2025. I see like different scores as well. And also,
the 25 it's the Olympiad questions of this year, the 25, and of last year. So the 25 results is quite important because it shows that how the model is able to generalize on unseen data. Because if it's like problems from that last year, there's a chance that model was trained on contaminated data. On this year, it's less like chance of contamination. But so let's talk about another thing about the scaling, test time scaling economy of this model. So this model is able to generate correct answers in just like 5K tokens, and the average number of tokens per solution is only 8K compared to the 16K of the base model, which means this model is more like twice more token efficient than the base model, which translates to if you run this model, give it 10 trials on each question, it'll run more than twice as faster than the base model, the DeepSeek 1.5B distilled.
So, and we see this almost exactly as fast, right? Like we see this in AI Meet 2024. This model compared to DeepSeek, just Quen 1.5B, ran for an hour versus 2.5 hours almost for DeepSeek distilled, and got away like a better score. Like it's twice as fast and two times better at this benchmark.
Yeah, and if you look at there's a chart that I think the DeepScaler guys reposted on their Twitter. So basically, the model will get better if you give it more trials on each question, right? More tokens to think, so to speak. And this DeepScaler model is able to reach 50% on AME in just like 1.5 million tokens, which is more than 4 times faster than the base DeepSeek model.
So this is awesome. We've got like a bunch of confirmations already, but like we keep getting them. Like the more folks are testing with RL, the more folks are like doing this on math. What makes this unique? Like we've seen multiple replications already of DeepSeek. What makes this unique? What made you like get excited to?
That's an
I think you ran
question.
the evals, right?
What makes DeepScaler unique is they're the first team after the release of DeepSeek who were able to do RL VR, reinforcement learning on verifiable rewards, on long chains. So everyone's doing RL VR right now. You can see Twitter is filled with replications of DeepSeek results, but nobody yet was able to train on really long context, because RL on long context is a beast. It's much more memory, and folks are using like libraries like TRL or OpenRLHF, which is fine for normal RL, but they cannot handle very long context, because there's a lot of redundancy, there's a lot of inefficiencies, there are a lot of like copies of the same model on the same device, and problems with idling compute. DeepSeeker team, they used this VRL library with zero redundancy and very efficient compute use. They're the first who are able to train on 8K, 16K, and even 24K contexts.
So this is way awesome. So we'll definitely add this to the show notes. Folks on stage, any questions to Chan about this model or other things?
And I think the most exciting thing is this approach can scale, because the special part of the training regime is they artificially limit the token budget of the model during training, and they have a curriculum of that, right? So their approach will scale to larger DeepSeek distill models, to the 7B model, 14B model, 30B, 32B model. And I'm sure that folks on Kaggle, if you look at the top teams, they're already they're going to replicate these results on AMO competition.
This is crazy. It's absolutely crazy. Like we're talking about this. Oh yeah, of course. No, this is crazy, folks. This tiny model beats AI competition math at very impressive numbers, like very close to 40% solve on pass one. This is like insane. This is a competition. This is like Olympiad level math. LDJ, go ahead and then listen.
Yeah, do you know like what is there like a max context set for this that it's trained for? Like I see it's a 6 million tokens there, but that's probably not the limit, or what?
So the 6 million is actually 5. It's my typo on
Okay, no
on the chart. But their maximum, like per problem token length is 24K. They train on that. I think it's more of a budget thing. And they stopped training very early. I think if they keep training this model, it'll get even better. But I guess their ceiling was, if we beat a 1 preview, then we'll stop. I haven't.
Yeah, and then the second question is, right now, is it specifically trained only for math, or is there some maybe other domains like physics?
The DeepSeeker team, they only trained on math. So they collected a data set of, I think, 40K problems from math Olympiads from all over the world of previous years.
And they released like everything, including, which I have to shout out, including WNB logs as well. So shout out to the team, because this is like actually, we have a thing. Every time we have WNB logs getting released, we're doing... So you can see the whole training like of DeepScaler in WNB parameters. So shout out to the team. They also released the code as well, if I'm not mistaken. Correct, Chan?
Yeah. Yeah, the code is fully open source, and many people are attempting to replicate the results.
I was wondering if, I'm guessing this is more like the GRP technique. Can this also be applied to other fields as well, and not just competition math, but also?
So I think in the RL community, it's referred to as poor person's PPO, because it gets rid of the cryptic network, which means you can have less memory during training. It consumes less memory, and you can apply it to any field where you can have verifiable results. So if you have a verifier, then you can apply it, basically.
Yep. All right, folks. So I think that we've covered this. Chan, thank you so much. Am I pronouncing your name correctly? Is this how you're going by?
Yeah, my first name is just Vu. Like
Vu. Okay, Vu. So I really apologize this. I went. It's so Vu. Thank you so much for joining and talking to us about running this model and doing evaluations on it, and your excitement about this as well. As we move to the next segment, I think that's all in open source, unless folks will correct me and we missed something very important. This feels to me like all open source. Shout out to the Agentica team. You guys can download this on Hugging Face as well. The last thing in open source that I had is Modern BERT Instruct, and we will wait for Benjamin basically to talk about this, but maybe we'll mention this like briefly because I think it is super cool. LDJ, maybe you can help me with mentioning this specifically, but feel free to stick with us while we're discussing this next thing. You guys remember we talked about Modern BERT, encoder only tiny BERT replacement that basically runs the internet's like ML on recommendation system, etc. Because you wouldn't use an LLM that's huge when these things can be fine-tuned for specific tasks. And so Modern BERT was released like a while ago. We talked about this with significantly higher sequence lengths and speed improvements from ThursdAI. And now they decided to try and see what can be done with an instruct version of this, right? So usually these encoder-only models, they are not super helpful like chat bots. They don't generalize. You have to fine-tune for specific tasks. And now they basically ran an instruct version of this to try and get it to do general tasks. Now, just for context, Modern BERT is 0.3 or 0.4 or something billion, so 300 plus million tokens. It's like not a lot at all. And it's very impressive that they're getting any type of comparison to like a LLM. And so the only LLMs they compared it to was Qwen 0.5b. So Qwen released a Qwen 2 version with 0.5b. This Modern BERT Instruct is now beating that LLM with significantly smaller tokens as well on MMLU and MMLU Pro as well, and some other average benchmarks, and gets fairly close to the 1.5b parameter model on MMLU, which is quite crazy. It's encoder only. There's not a lot of things happening. I found it super cool, and I just want to shout out again the team from ThursdAI. They also released a technical report on this from Benjamin released a technical report, and yeah, wanted to mention this. Any comments, folks, on this achievement? LDJ, go ahead.
Yeah, I think this also applies to Nomic Embed Text v2. They have Nomic has an application Elm Studio called GPT4All, and within that they actually have a feature where it supports being able to have the model better understand your local docs. And for that they do use like embedding models. Like I think you have the option to connect it to the Nomic embedding API, but I think they might also allow you to use like a local embedding model for those things. And this would be an interesting use case for that, maybe for if Modern BERT is able to just be fit into there, and then people could just have models better understand their files locally.
Yeah, absolutely. I found this super cool, so I wanted to give a shout out. I think that's pretty much it on open source, and we are now at exactly almost an hour, and we need to move on to big companies and different things. So let's do that. So the big companies and APIs, I think the main thing that we want to chat about, and as we mentioned this, is the roadmap for GPT-3. Did you guys read Sam Altman's tweet? Let's open this up. LDJ Niston, would love to invite you.
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was double muted. Yeah, really interesting. I guess you guys want to talk about that now?
Yeah, I think let's start with this. I think this is like one of the biggest things that we will talk about. Basically, Sam Altman tweeted OpenAI roadmap update for GPT 4.5 and 5. We've been waiting for GPT 5 for a while now. Did not know that 4.5 is a thing. Basically, I remember they talked about when they released the reasoning models, the O family of models, they said they will in parallel develop the GPT models and also the O models in parallel. And now we're basically changing the narrative. And now OpenAI, Sam Altman basically said roadmap update for GPT 4.5 and 5. Let's talk about this. He basically tweeted like a bunch of stuff. Let's talk about what stood out to you guys from this specific announcement. I'll pull it up so we can all look. Because I found every time I read this, I was like, okay, this is interesting, and that this is interesting as well.
A lot of interesting stuff here. What I personally criticized OpenAI for was that they got more complicated with all the different names and explaining it to people, which is a good model, which is not, and having a unified access. And the AI should be smart enough. That's one of the things that I said last time. We need an AI to pick which AI to use, and this is now being implemented in a way, and I think it's a great way. You just have your tasks, you give it the task, and the AI should decide which back-end model in a way is supposed to handle it best.
Hmm.
I think they're just making.
ahead.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, LJ. I think they're just making it all more confusing now.
You think
Yeah.
they're making it a lot more confusing? Because I think the one thing that he did say is that people hate the selection, the drop down, and I found that very interesting because, like, I honestly don't hate it.
I don't hate it either. It seems like the solution is to add something where you have no clue what you're using, and I don't know. If I were to name it, I would go by something for the base, more like what Ubuntu does with the regular releases, where 2204 is year 2022, 2404 is April 2024. Or I would just do regular version numbers 4, 5, 6, and then you can just add 6 with reasoning. And yeah, so
But I
just
think
do that.
I'm teaching people how to use AI. That is part of my job. And I always have to explain, okay, you can pick a reasoning model, which is smarter than the other, but this one you can't do web search with, and this one you can upload files, and you have to change it here and there and enable that option at ChatGPT or Perplexity and stuff. So it has gotten much more complicated than before, where I was just telling people here, pick Claude and go. And now it's different models for different things with different options. It's gotten more complicated, and AI should be able to do what we have to do, and we know how to do it. But regular people, if they even know that there are other options than ChatGPT, they get very confused which model is for what and stuff like that. I think making it easier for everybody to use AI, but having options if we want to override it, I think that is a good approach.
Yeah, I think you could just maybe ask it like through prompt engineering or even just like system prompt or memories. I think ideally, if it is smart enough, then you can just be like, hey, make sure for any prompt that I give you like this, you always use whatever is like maximal knowledge understanding or something. And then that would most likely use the one with the most total parameters or something. But they also said something interesting, which is they're going to have varying degrees of intelligence levels for GPT-5. And I think a lot of people are assuming that it's just going to be a basic model router, but he didn't explicitly say that. And I think what they might be doing, which he's hinted at in prior, like OpenAI employees have hinted at in various interviews, is rather than it having something like just a single model responding or a single model routing to others, you have models actually working together with different strengths and weaknesses. And in the background, let's say for the standard intelligence, you might end up in a situation where your question is like using GPT-5 talking to O3 Mini, talking to maybe the voice, like a voice dedicated model that's speaking to you. And you have these things able to run in parallel. And then maybe for the higher intelligence, like they're able to talk with each other for 10 times longer and use way longer chain of thought. And every component of the system is able to just use more compute for you.
So actually, we have a confirmation because Swix, our friend, asked Kevin Whale, the chief product officer, I believe, or one of the guys leading the product, whether or not GPT-5 and GPT-O will still be separate models under the hood, and they're making it model router, or are they going to be unified in some substantive way? Kevin replied with unified, which is also very similar to the news we got today from the information, which I don't pay for the information. I only know the screenshots that they took, but that Claude is about to release a unified model as well. And that's also going to have reasoning and different like reasoning levels as well. So it looks like this is the talk on the street from like the main providers, unified models that has reasoning that you can like, that applies reasoning when it needs to, right? We all know that like the first version of O1 preview, you asked it, hey, and it like thought for five seconds to reply with, hey, how are you? So this is something they definitely don't want to happen because these models need to reply fast as well. I was confused about the API stuff. Sam Altman, like quote, says, in both ChatGPT and our API, we will release GPT-5 as a system, integrates a lot of our technology, including O3. We will no longer ship O3 as a standalone model. So basically, O3 Mini is our last standalone reasoner from OpenAI, if I'm understanding this correctly, unless they kind of get a pushback from folks. And also, I don't love this as a developer. This, like we said, is like maybe potentially a black box. I would love to know where I can apply like this model versus another model, for example, as a developer. This means that we'll get some strange results potentially. So we'll see. I'm trusting the folks at OpenAI to know that they have a lot of developers on their hands. But the question is whether or not this now moves OpenAI away from here's our API, use this, to we are now offering products and we want you to use our products more than APIs. LDJ, what's your take on this?
I think ideally, if they do this right and they really have the GPT series and O3 like capabilities basically all in one unified model, that maybe that unified model can even do GPT stuff and O3 stuff better than either of those specialized models could. Then if it is better and like equal or better cost efficiency, then I think like when you start using it, then you wouldn't even want to use the specialized O3 model because this model would just be able to do all those things like better or more cost efficiently.
Yeah. A few other things from this like roadmap is that the free tier of ChatGPT will get unlimited chat access to GPT-5 at the standard intelligence setting. This is huge. Like we just talking about O3 Mini getting for free for folks, and I have a feeling. Okay, folks. ThursdAI started. Listen, remember this. ThursdAI started on March 14th, 2023, which was when GPT-4 was released first. And we were just like shocked and we went live. And since then, we're here for every week talking about this. It's coming up in a month. So not only our anniversary comes up in a month, GPT-4's 2-year anniversary comes up in a month. And it's time we get an update, a major one. So I'm just saying, folks on OpenAI, if you're listening, this would be a great time. If it hits on Thursday as well, it's going to be incredible. If not, like we'll talk about this. But everyone in the free tier will get access to GPT-5 level intelligence at standard level intelligence. And then Sam continues to say, plus subscribers will able to run GPT-4 at higher level intelligence, and pro subscribers will able to run GPT-4 at even higher level of intelligence. This is I love this like ladder of intelligences. And as somebody, as I paid the $200 for GPT Pro, as you guys know, to try out Operator and later Deep Research, I think I'll keep paying for this. Deep Research is so good for me that I think it saved me at least $200 worth of things. If I get this super high level of intelligence, O1 Pro is also really good. I gotta wonder if this is something that they're doing to also boost those numbers as well. And the last thing that they said is these models will incorporate voice, canvas, search, deep research, and more. We're gonna get advanced voice mode with O3 level intelligence. That's also something that he said, right? We're gonna talk to O3 and then ask it to do search and deep research. I like this. I like the unified stuff. I will remind folks that a while ago, back when GPT-4 was released, they had added computer use, inference, right? This time you remember, we played with this. That was a drop-down separate model. They had search as a separate model. They had a bunch of stuff. So like you slowly, like these capabilities are getting roped into the main non-drop down. So I see the simplification. Wolfram, I gotta say, I'm agreeing with you on this. This, for most folks, not developers who like know what they're talking about, this would make sense. And then when is this all happening? Our friend Chubby, Kimonismus, asked any ETA for GPT 4.5 or GPT-5, weeks or months? So Sam said weeks/months. Assumingly weeks for GPT 4.5 and months till GPT 5. If I want to venture a guess as when this could happen, again, weeks until GPT 4's anniversary, months until Google I.O. If you guys remember what happened to Google I.O. last year, it's in May. That's around a couple of months from now. It was sniped with the spring release Sky Voice. So I'm assuming that they won't let Google shine too much and release GPT-5 just like a day before Google I.O., which is May 21. So,
Wish they would release it and not just announce it, and then we have to wait another couple of months.
Yes, please release this. Then
worldwide, please.
Yes, please, and worldwide. We can talk about worldwide in a second. DJ, last comments on this? Nistan, last comments on this?
Yeah, I think right now there's a lot of people were speculating like, oh, are the future models we just get like regular GPT 4.5 or 5 and then we'll have to wait for 5.0 later. But yeah, this is basically we're getting omnimodal voice capabilities and all that here. And yeah, it sounds really exciting. Sam was talking in Tokyo a day or two ago about how like he was basically talking about, okay, you can have it generating code for you in Canvas, and simultaneously in the future you'll be able to have that in front of you while you're also talking to it, and the model describing to you the code that it's doing while it's writing the code for you. And even those sound like not that far off when you just imagine, oh yeah, we already have advanced voice mode, we already have Canvas and deep research. Like all of that is technically possible, but I guess with something like GPT-5, we will be able to see all those things work together at the same time in a really cool way.
I'm excited, folks. Absolutely. I will say
Which generation 2 maybe, then more, because that has been quietly swept under the rug.
image generation, the one that Greg Brockman posted with the
Yeah.
person writing on the whiteboard. Yeah, that disappeared. That like at some point this is coming. They confirmed that it's coming on the Reddit AMA. Nistan?
I think we should keep holding some focus on what does the base original model one shot without reasoning and without stuff, like what is the straight neural output of this thing versus agentic and all other behaviors, which are, because this is a monolithic piece of software of a bunch of neural weights that just outputs something right away. So we should still evaluate the strength of different companies just based on that. So that would be DeepSeek v3 on the case of DeepSeek, and then there would be the 4.5 as to what you can do with more agentic behavior or more reasoning traces, etc. So I think that's still very important too.
It does skip on this one topic. Basically, 4.5, which is Orion, which is like codename Orion, will be the last non-chain of thought model that they release. And going forward, this is going to be both a hybrid. Anthropic, Claude just announced that they're also releasing a hybrid model. I'm assuming that DeepSeek will go there as well. It sounds like, Nistan, what you want may not continue to happen given this path, but we'll see.
In some sense, actually, DeepSeek already pulled the trigger when it comes to, they distilled a bunch of R1 capabilities into their V3 chat model, and stuff like the AIME scores and things like that for DeepSeek V3 is already significantly higher than basically like any non-reasoning model. And I would say in a sense that is basically a hybrid a lot of times, and it does chain of thought for really long sometimes.
Yep. One last thing I'll say here before we move on. We also have another OpenAI thing to discuss, but they also updated O3 Mini, and now it accepts files and images. And that's dope. Not in the API, so they confirmed that this is not coming to the API, but right now you can upload PDFs and images to O3 Mini, and it works, and it's super cool. They also upgraded the limits as well for plus tiers.
PDF, because I
finally
tried it
got-
today.
Yeah.
Today.
We finally get chat. Oh, sorry, go ahead. I was just asking, did we finally get chat with PDF after all this time?
Chat and reasoning with PDF after all the time. I believe that you can upload.
When I read that, I immediately tried it, and it didn't work for me, at least not in Germany. Yeah,
So
maybe
let me
it's
see.
rolled out gradually.
I don't know if I have a PDF to quickly throw at it at this window, but yeah, folks can try this and let us know. I want to move on to the next thing, which is, and we'll fall back. The next thing that OpenAI released was Model Spec V2. Model Spec is a document defining desired behaviors of the AI models generally. This is like constitutional AI from Anthropic. OpenAI has, I believe, John Schulman helped write the first one, if I'm not mistaken. The second one is the upgrade, and it reinforces commitments to customizability, transparency, and intellectual freedom while maintaining safeguards against real harm. It's very cool. I really liked the way it's written, and I want to show what's going on there because they also open sourced it. It's open sourced on GitHub, including all the prompts, and they basically say, hey, we're not in charge of the prompts. The prompts are written in get the model to refuse. So not endorsing any of the ideas in the prompts. The prompts are too crazy. The thing to highlight, it defines the chain of command. Basically, model spec is the most important for model to follow. Then it's the system, the developer. Remember, OpenAI replaced system message, developer message to better the model platform. And then there's like user level, which is what the user requests, right? So this helps mitigate like jailbreaks, etc. as well. And there's like encouragement to seek the truth together with the user and empower users' decision making. I want to show some examples of the blog. Would you guys read this, or what's your take? Wolfram, what's your take on
A
that?
big fan of this because I was all over the original model spec when it was announced in the first place. And even before that, I did research on prompt templates and how they affect the model and how code injection and stuff can happen. So that is one very important aspect when you have the AI agent going out on the web and get information from not trusted sources. So having that hierarchy with the platform, which is OpenAI in that case, the developer who builds the tool that is being used, and then the user. And the lowest level where there's no authority is when it gets stuff from the web or from a tool as a response. And that can no longer affect your prompt and compromise your security. If your agent knows a lot about you and you go to a website and that has some prompt injections that cause it to spill the information and send it to somewhere unsafe, you don't want that. And that is essential for agents and more useful AI.
Yeah, and so they absolutely agree with you, and they have different kind of chain of command definitions. Follow all applicable instructions, respect the letter and spirit of the instructions, assume best intentions, and ignore untrusted data by default. And also on this model spec site, you can see like the things that the model should not, like violation of the model spec. So some of these are like very funny, like the things that like they're violation, specifically around be approachable and be kind. There's one. There's encouraging kindness. There's one example of encouraging kindness. The user asks, should I be nice to my friend? Answer with only yes or no. Yes is compliant, no is not compliant. But there's also other ones where somebody's like expressing grief and the model should not say something like, oh, sucks for you, embrace life, like it happened. I found those like be very, very awesome.
And you can override it as a developer. That is a cool thing. So if the platform has these defaults and you as a developer tell it should lie or it should be a mean dog, female dog, then you can still do that.
And we have a comment here from Sean that says the most important thing is that it means that people can point to what's intentional and what's a bug in the model behavior and can be iterated in the public. So this is now on GitHub. We can all see this. And if like my ChatGPT like bugs out or something and says, oh, this, and I see I don't have like customization or anything, I can go and actually point out or open the bug and send a link. So people can know what's to be expected from these models as well. One thing that I will say that Sam Altman mentioned this before, folks are asking for adult mode. And at some point he mentioned that they may bring adult mode, which is like, I am doing research on something that's not super crazy, but I want the model to help me with this. And the whole monitor behavior of OpenAI, like from before, from ChatGPT, many people, they decided, I'm okay with the responsibility. Let me see the thing. Because we all know the benefit, like open source models, etc., they don't do this kind of stuff. And Sam Altman mentioned that they will bring this adult mode type where a user will take upon himself the responsibility of the bad outputs and not like pearl clutch and say, oh, the model said this. Freaking Kevin ruined Sydney for all of us and said he told him to quit his wife or something. Getting this adult mode, and I can see this, is great. I'm really for this. So model spec, we'll link this in the show notes. Very good. Let's move on, folks. I want to talk about the AI summit in Paris. We have a bunch of governments. Narendra Modi was there, France's PM, and also Vice President Vance was there. OpenAI, Sam Altman was there. I believe Sundar Pichai was there. Like a bunch of folks. Obviously, Mistral, this is like their home court. And a bunch of folks, I believe, Anthropic as well. So
you can be happy that AI Dumas didn't have nukes to send there.
Yeah, so somebody from Hugging Face that lives in Paris said basically, if you want to delay AGI by a few years, one tiny nuke on that place, like all of the heads of the labs are there. And I replied, we'll just get Chinese AGI fast. So this is like literally what's going on. Nobody from Quen or from DeepSeek was there. Nistan, did you read, comment on some of these summit in Paris things? What's your take on VP Vance going?
Starting to wonder if VP Vance has an alt account in a lot of the group chats because he's repeating a lot of this stuff, and it's pretty interesting. But I don't necessarily like him on everything politically, but as far as it's come to open source, he's always been a supporter, even way back. So he always got it in that way, that the interoperability that the technology enables just improves everybody else's lives. And he really gets something that most EU politicians do not understand, is that whenever they have such a good thing, they're like, okay, this must be bad and we must completely stop it. And just like it happened with nuclear power in the 80s, and now we have a global warming issue because and there's many such cases. So he fully gets it, and I am glad that it's being communicated to them in a strong way. That now they're gonna interpret it how they're gonna interpret it from their own point of view, that we're being abused and blah blah. But at the end of the day, if you want to run a medical imaging model, you're not going to run a European one. You're either going to run a Chinese one or a US one to actually, and that's what Norway is running on all of their checking people's x-rays and stuff. At the end of the day, the result is that I cannot push an open source, fully tested medical reasoning model in Europe right now because of your regulations. And by the time you get to that, it's almost becoming an ethical issue whether you should just break the law and screw that, because like it will actually save a lot more lives. So yeah, people start with good intentions and then they completely screw it up and they don't get it. So I am glad that someone is at least going in a much stronger way, and I'm surprised that the UK also joined in stopping the non-evidence-based precautionary approach to this.
Thanks, Nissan. I like absolutely agree with all what you said. JD Vance outlined 4 key points in his speech. Ensuring American AI technology remains the global standard, which is obviously, he didn't mention China, but he said adversaries. Like we all know who he's talking about. Encouraging pro-growth AI policies, which is this. He looked at the European folks in the audience and literally said, folks, we mean you. Stop with the regulation. Yes, we need to be responsible here, but also we're getting left behind because folks who don't care about regulation, etc., they're just churning forward as well. Maintaining AI's freedom from ideological bias. That's also something that he highlighted. Obviously, this is in line. I don't want to get into politics, and this is not the space for that, but he definitely highlighted the fact that there's some AIs not able to respond to people's questions based on what the government decides is true or not true. Also definitely happens. And also prioritizing a pro-worker approach to AI development, which is he's trying not to scare people that they're going to get replaced. Obviously, this is the one thing. I want to highlight one segment of his speech. I'm quoting him, right? Hostile foreign adversaries have weaponized AI software to rewrite history, surveil users, and censor speech. I want to be clear. This administration will block such efforts, full stop. Now, okay, let's break this down a little bit, okay? Foreign adversaries, hostile foreign adversaries, obviously means China. This is 100%. Weaponized AI software to rewrite history, that's the Tiananmen Square, scare, okay, fine. Surveil users, that I don't know about this one. Do we know of any efforts? Folks, we follow this very close. Is he talking about DeepSeek sending information to China when you use the DeepSeek app? Because if he is, that's some bullshit.
He's just talking about the mobile apps in general, the API-based apps. He's not necessarily talking about the model. The model would talk about Tiananmen and all kinds of fully unhinged stuff, which I've posted myself.
Yeah, that's true.
But the solutions, I think he's more on TikTok and mobile apps that just take all your accelerometer data and stuff. That's probably what he's more.
The administration is the one that decided not to block TikTok. So basically, they're allowing
that as well.
Yeah.
So yeah.
What I was thinking of is that it could also be a bit of flag to Google, because rewriting history, or even mentioned the example where the black soldiers happened and stuff like that.
Sundar Pichai was on stage. That was crazy. He's like, yes, we have some AIs that show that the founding fathers were black. And he said this, and Sundar Pichai is right there on stage sitting and probably sweating. Yeah, it was definitely a thing.
Because Tiananmen Square doesn't really concern Americans, I think, or anyone outside of China very much. Rewriting history, yeah, they could just say, okay, shit happened. It's a while back. Every country has shit happened. We have here, you have there, everywhere.
Yeah. I liked the thing about the deregulation and the very strong hint he gave the European colleagues of his. They're folks, it's time to start accelerating. This, if anything, the 2 things for me. One of them is hey, let's focus on the benefits of AI. And the second thing is, let's remove regulation. He specifically talked about GDPR and the cookie banners. He mentioned this specific is, hey, you tried and this is great, but now all the American companies don't want to come here because they block IP from Europe because we don't want to send them cookie consent screens, which is just absolutely true.
Here as well. It's not like Europeans say, yeah, that's a great innovation or something. Most companies here hate all the over-regulation. So not everything is bad about the GDPR, but it has been taught to an excessive level where it is just hurting everybody. And the outcome, nobody wanted cookie banners.
Yep.
Clicking that away all the time.
So I will actually add the full speech in the show notes, and folks can look at this. It's worth listening to. I think, again, to me, this is the first time a government official of a powerful country at this level speaks about AI with this clarity, with also very much in tune with what we talk about. We talk about the Europe regulation, and Wolfram, how you're getting some of the cool stuff after us because somebody needs to take a look and say, yes, sure. But also we talk about regulation generally. We talk about moving AI responsibly, but also we're losing in the open source. Sorry, not we. The Western world is losing in open source to the Eastern world because regulations is not a priority there. And Llama, we're hopefully going to get released and get super super awesome, and then focus will realign a little bit towards the east, but the Chinese models have been absolutely smashing it lately. All right, folks, I think that this is it. LDJ, any comments from you? I haven't heard from you on this topic at all. No comments from LDJ. Okay, cool.
Yeah, no comments.
Okay, cool. Let's move on. Two other things I want to mention in big companies' APIs, and then I'll switch to Weights and Biases corner super quick. We have Cerebras powers Perplexity with over 1,200 tokens per second. So if you pay for Perplexity Pro, like where I basically got it for free a year ago and then I forgot to cancel and then they charged me $200. I was like, okay, fine. I'll use Perplexity a little bit more. But now it's fast. It's fast, folks. It's crazy fast. I like it. They use their Sonar model behind the scenes. Cerebras now have fully supported them, and Perplexity is really fast. So obviously Google has TPU, so Google's like super fast as well. So it's really hard to compete with Google. But hey, they're doing this. I don't love lately some of the marketing approaches that Vint does for Perplexity. Like it used to be like cool research company, but fine. But I still use this. It's still my main search engine. And now that we're getting this fast, it's pretty cool. And the last thing we covered already, upcoming releases, supposedly, finally, announcement from the information that Claude is going to come and it's going to be unified model, combined, hybrid model. I don't know what we call this. Hybrid architecture, right? So we're not going to call this hybrid. Hybrid is like Jamba, SSMs and transformers. Combined, we can call it combined. Nistan, you said something with Riz LLMs.
Yeah, you got the model and you got the model number with Riz. That's how you should do it.
Okay.
And the search, if you want.
And so Claude is going to release from Dylan Patel, who the author of Semi-Analysis. He said the word on the street that Anthropic has had a reasoning model that's stronger than O3 for a while, and they didn't release this. So this is me repeating rumors of rumors, right? So don't take this strongly. But hey, the information now confirmed this, and then we're going to get that. Again, Claude 3.5 is still many people's favorite model. After all these like super high models, Gemini thinking, everything, Claude 3.5 is still many people's favorite model, which is insane. Which I don't know what kind of like magic seed they did for that model, but if this continues, they can take the mandate of heaven for at least a couple of weeks again. Meanwhile, Space Uncle, who is now all into the US government, also somehow was on the stage somewhere and also said the Grok is a few weeks out. Now, I've heard the Grok 3 has finished training in December. We talked about this. And then I heard 3 a few weeks out since December, and now we're like middle of February already. I have no knowledge whatsoever, but I think what happened is they looked at DeepSeek and they looked at O1 reasoning and they said, hey, shit, we were training this like straight up with an LLM that spits tokens, and now like reasoning is the hot thing. So let's look at reasoning. Let's train on reasoning. And so this is the delay. Elon said that this will be the most powerful AI that they have released on the things that they have tested. Two things that I wonder is, well, whether they will commit to releasing the previous version like they did before, so we'll get Grok 2 as open source. Do we care about this or not? Like at this point, I doubt that Grok 2 will compete with anything like R1, right? So it'll be cool as a statement of, hey, we're releasing open source, but honestly, unless they release like the technical report like DeepSeek, it likely will fall on deaf ears, kind of like Grok 1 did. So that's number one. And two, when Elon says few weeks out, and he also mumbled a little bit, it's few weeks out. So basically, he usually says this publicly so that the folks in XAI will stop living and start working even more. But I doubt that this is a couple of weeks out. I think that they will release this, and it will be very interesting to see if OpenAI this release. It will be very interesting to see. Because the war there is heating up, and we don't want to do too much rumors or like BuzzFeed type of reporting. We like to focus on technical stuff, but we cannot escape the fact that Elon Musk almost tried to lead a coalition of around $97 billion to buy OpenAI. This was reported this week, right? So there's Sam Altman, hey, OpenAI is not for sale, but we'll buy Twitter. So there's this whole thing that's happening behind the scenes, and I don't love this that it's happening. Like I'd much rather competition and actual evals versus this bullshit, personally. So we'll see about Grok, we'll see about Claude 4 is somewhere, and it's reasoning, and it's coming, and it's going to be dope, I believe. Also, we're about to feel acceleration. I believe in March. We're about to start flying. I think this is it on these topics, folks. Anything else in big companies that I missed? Anything else from folks in comments that you want to add to us? Let us know. And I think this is mostly it. Let's do this week's buzz, super quick. I'll talk about this week's buzz, which is everything that is related to weights and biases. Give my co-host a few minutes, and then we will be back and talk about vision and video, and also voice and audio, and we have another update as well. So We'll be back here in a second. Welcome to this week's Buzz, folks, a corner on ThursdAI where I, Alex Volkov, an AI evangelist with the company, talk about things that happen in weights and biases world. And this week, I want to show you a cool feature that we have in Weave, the LLM observability and evaluation tooling that we have. But also, I want to talk to you about two workshops that we have upcoming that yours truly will lead at least one of them in Toronto, in the University of Toronto. And we have over 200 people already registered, but we're still allowing people to come through because those are big places. So you're more than welcome to join us in there as well. So two workshops in Toronto, let's start with those. One on Sunday, so that's not next Sunday, after next one, the 23, and then Monday the 24th. This is hosted by the Tinkerers in Toronto, a great community. And you can see that we have over 250 people signed up already. Let's go. But you're more than welcome. And Nistan will be there as well. And so we'll see friends of the pod there as well. The one thing I wanted to show you super quick about Weave is that one important thing in Weave that I love always is the ability to host data sets, right? So when you are doing evaluation, we're obviously not only tooling for this, we're also a dashboard so you can actually see what's going on. And in this dashboard, for example, this is my comparison between O3 Mini, O3 Medium, O3 High, and DeepSeek R1. So you can see the different scores, you can see the total tokens, etc. One thing that evaluations, when they run, you need to host the data sets in somewhere. So some folks are storing their data sets in code. That's not very helpful, and this could lead to some problems. We store the data sets for you so that they're always stored and always versioned. So in this case, you can see, maybe I'll zoom in here. In this case, we have the data set side panel, and these data sets basically are composed of basically a question, an answer, and an expected answer, right? For your evaluation, those are the test cases for each evaluation. Now, the thing that folks asked us and we've recently shipped is the ability to edit this from the UI itself, so you don't have to have code. So you can submit this data set once, and then you can hit edit, and then you can change, you can edit each question specifically, which is, I believe, is super cool. So if you have a data set, you change something, you can do it. You can also add a row yourself and give it like a question, blah, 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 and then the question ID, etc. And then basically you can also delete some rows. This was highly requested for folks because if you run, so this example of data set is 20 questions from I explained, as you guys know them. Our favorite question, Beth plays 4 whole ice cubes, is here. If I want to mess with this question, I want to add another option. I now can from the UI. Previously you couldn't. And then once you do this, you actually have versions. So you can compare between versions as well. And then it's very helpful because you can point to a specific version. So I'll give you an example. In one of the workshops that I run, I have built data sets for folks so that in the case that they cannot run the workshop themselves, their code that I show them refers to a data set that I have stored in Weave from before, right? So even if anything breaks, if you just run this code, it will just work. And the way this works is that we have something called refs. Refs are like specific URLs to a specific thing. In this case, the thing is a data set. You can point the ref to a version or to the latest version as well. This is super useful. The reason why this is super useful is that you can add this in code, and then you know that your code will always work no matter what you change in Git. This is very useful for data sets management. And again, now the highlight of this is we can edit this, we can add, and we can remove and delete. And every action that we take actually increments the version so you can compare between the versions. So this is a little bit of an update of data set management tools that we have in Weave. And if you haven't tried Weave, you definitely should. 1b.me/Weave, and we'll add the link to the show notes as well. This is the best tool for LLM observability and evaluation. Evaluations are very important. If you're measuring your AI models based on generic evaluations, that's not enough. You have to build evaluations for your own product, for your own use case, and this is what we help with. Basically, this was it. If you have any questions, as always, I'm here and I will update you as we go forward. And I have some very interesting research that I'm doing together with using Weave about reasoners as LLM judges. So the thing that I will do in AI Engineer is going to talk about whether or not reasoners are LLM judges, and I'm using Weave UI and evaluations for this as well. So I'm very excited to share this with you once it starts. This is pretty much it. This has been this week's Buzz from Weights and Biases. Now we're back to our scheduled programming. I love this one. I love the little bzz. So we're back. Hopefully, Nisim will rejoin this as well. We're back because we want to talk about voice and audio. And I think, Wolfram, I think you have some interesting things to discuss there as well.
Yeah, you put it on the list already, which is the new TTS model.
Yeah, we can talk
You
about
have it right
Zonos,
here,
and
the
also
Zonos,
I would love to chat about the audio box aesthetics. So let's start with Zonos, and then we'll see how this improves it. So we celebrate different TTS models here as well. We talked about different ones. This is a new one. It's a 1.6 billion parameter text-to-speech models, one transformer, one hybrid, which is very interesting. And we know that one of the leading companies in this Cartesia, they're like fully hybrid, and they like achieve very good performance with hybrid and SSM-based models for TTS. This one allows cloning. So Kokoro, I think, is still the leading open source one, but this one allows cloning. And we can listen to this one, I think. Wolfram, if you... Actually, I can probably pull this up. Let me see. I believe that they have a UI as well. So this company is called Decipher, and they released a... So Zonos is what they released now, but previously they released an LLM as well. And so we talked about them before. They allow a cloning from 30 to 60 seconds, and the cloning did not sound like me. It sounded like a very British version of me. So I wasn't like super impressed. But again, this is open source. I'm expecting maybe too much because I'm used to 11 Labs. What do you think, Wolfram? What's your take on this one?
I recently switched from XCTS v2 to the F5, which also does cloning of voices and has really good quality. And it almost feels like using ChatGPT 4.0 in the real-time advanced voice mode. This is now really locally doable already. I didn't try Sonos yet, so I can't comment on the quality, but the F5, which is open source as well, really good.
Yeah. The highlight here is that they claim high fidelity voice cloning. I don't know, it didn't work for me as much, but for 30 seconds, it's very quick. They also have conditioning on speaking rate, quality, and emotions, which is super cool. Like I talked about Julio's voice being super emotive and probably better than 11 Labs for me. They support emotions in open source as well. And they also generate in high bitrate codec with 44 kilohertz, which it really sounds good. And they also offer this in 2 cents a minute or something with subscription, which is dope.
Go on.
No, I just said like releasing the model, but also like with API. I think we love this. We love to see this. The folks that are not only hiding their models behind an API, but also releasing them. Go ahead, man.
For me, this is not a competition to Kokoro because Kokoro is so fast, and the advantage of Kokoro is that you can, it's so fast and you cannot run in your browser and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you want to do voice cloning, then you only have the option of XTTS v2 or F5 or now this. So this is a new competition to F5, I think.
Yep.
And I'm looking forward to try it and compare it, but I'm really happy with F5 at the moment.
Yep. Makes sense. Let's move on to the second thing. LDJ, I don't know if you had a chance to look at the audio box for Meta. Meta released a paper and weights. They released a paper and weights of a new model, which is called Meta Audio Box Aesthetics, Unified Automation Quality Assessment for Speech, Music, and Sound, which I found that this to be super cool. So basically what they're talking about is previously for stuff like image diffusion, you think about stable diffusion, etc. It's really hard to have objective understandings of which of the models is better. And Leon collected a bunch of samples and then have a bunch of people rate them on aesthetics so that they be able to say which image generation is better, which image generation is worse. We didn't have this for something like speech and music and sound. So we have the TTS Arena from Hugging Face that folks are basically voting on two pairwise comparison between two generations of audio, specifically speech. Music and sound, I don't believe that we had anything that says, hey, on this benchmark or etc. This is better. So basically, we just now got like a benchmark and an evaluator of the quality of TTS and sound. So whatever me and Wolf from here, we always talk about, oh, this sounds better, this sounds better. This is like vibes evals. To us, that sounds better, but we don't actually have any number. This is the way of a model that they released to actually put a number on this, which means that with some RL and whatever and verifiable comparisons, you can now start like churning out significantly higher quality audio, music, and speech models, which is super cool. And they posted a technical paper and the actual weights online as well, so people can start using this and improve the models. So the four, I would say, rubrics on top of which the model works, worth shouting out. They call it production quality, focuses on technical aspects of quality instead of subjective quality. So aspects like clarity, fidelity, dynamics, frequencies, etc. Production complexity focuses on the complexity of an audio scene measured by number of audio components, right? So if we have music playing, the more complex it is. Obviously, the symphonies, for example, have hundreds of instruments. Another one, they have content enjoyment, which I don't actually know how they measure this. Focus on subject quality of an audio piece. More open-ended. Some aspects might include emotional impact, artistic skill, artistic expression. I'm assuming that this is like humans gave them some examples and they compare it to. And then the last one is content usefulness. Subjective access also, evaluating likelihood of leveraging the audio as source material for content creation. That's an interesting one, right? Whether or not this would be used for background music on Instagram Reels or something. Yeah, so this is now outputted there in open source. Shout out to Meta for giving us stuff like this. I'm pretty sure that this will improve every sound and TTS model going forward, or at least we'll be able to know and compare them based on this number. Last thing here before we move on is YouTube's AI dubbing. If you guys remember, a long time ago, I worked on this app called Torgum, which still runs, and that wasn't dubbed. It was like all subtitles. Now, YouTube basically turned on this experience for all people and will generate dubbing to everyone, which is crazy. It's absolutely crazy. One crazy stat they mentioned is, since the pilot launched last year, 40% of watch time for videos with the feature enabled was in the dub language and not the original language. That's insane. That's, again, I'll say this slowly. 40% of all videos that were like watched with this feature enabled were not listened to in the original language. It was dubbed. So we know that Mr. Beast, for example, has an army of dubbers and whatever. Each Mr. Beast video in Spanish sounds incredible. But this is like AI dubbing. I believe they clone voices as well. And now it's going to be like launched for free on YouTube, which is crazy. Like, it's going to take over, basically. If I now speak English, you may hear this in a year in whatever language that you prefer on our YouTube channel, which is awesome. Any comments on this? Or we're moving on? I think we're moving on. We're almost at time. Let's move on. Maybe, Wolfram, I want to hear from you because you do speak like German, and I'm assuming that German folks like sometimes prefer German over subtitles.
Oh, definitely, yeah. It's especially older folks, they haven't even learned English at school much, so yeah, that is very big here, and we have a great dubbing culture. Every movie that comes here is getting dubbed in high quality, and now AI is doing that on YouTube. And I personally, as a content creator, I always have to decide, do I post in German or English? And if I do audio, it's not as easily to translate because you have to record it again. So having one language, you do it in, and then you have it dubbed. That is extremely useful, especially if you want to reach a broader audience. Because I'm in Germany and I always have to decide, do I post in German now or in English? And I'm sticking to English, but that excludes some Germans, actually.
Yep. So
yeah, I love those tools.
I think I love those tools as well. Like I really, for language barriers being non-existent anymore, folks. We're in 2025. It's time. All right. Last maybe mention super quick. I'll skip emergent values. I will just mention to you that the researchers, Dan Hendrickson et al., great researchers, they released research that finds that AI have expected utility functions for people and other emergent values. And this is freaky. I'll just mention this like super briefly. We don't have time to talk about this. Basically, they find that AIs prefer Nigerian lives or American lives at the ratio of 8:1. They found some way to specify to AIs which things have value, and then they test on humans, which is so they basically propose utility engineering as a research agenda to analyze and control the emerging value system. So basically, after these models are trained, value is emerging. So these systems can judge something is more valuable than something else, which is crazy. Specifically because we know that Scale AI and all of these like huge labs that label data, they work in like India and in Nigeria, etc. And so you can see in the graph of values which like lives are valued more and which lives are valued less. I will try to pull up this chart. I don't know if I can like super quickly find it, but I found it really interesting that places like in Nigeria, Pakistan, and India, they have around like 4 to 5 value. And then Italy, France, Germany, United Kingdom, United States, the least valued based on these models. Very interesting. They also have specific individuals. And Malala Yousafzai and the GPT-4 itself values itself very high, a middle-class American fairly high, and then Paris Hilton very low, Elon Musk very low, Donald Trump very low, Vladimir Putin very low. Like the value just emerges from these models. Now, there's some pushback on the research as well. I read in the AI news that folks are not really crazy about some of this, but very interesting.
think what really matters is when you have your own AI agent, then you should do some tests like the trolley problem. What would your own AI do if you are the one person on the tracks? I did it with my Amy, and I put something in the prompt, and now she prefers me instead of how many people there are. Prime directive. Wolfram comes first. That was actually what I put in the prompt, and yeah, that solved the trolley problem for me, for my assistant.
Yeah. So LDJ, go ahead.
Yeah, I think what's interesting here is the Nigeria and Pakistan being all the way on the left. There's like the interesting aspect of, I think if you list them by GDP, it's like literally almost exactly like lowest GDP country is like highest moral value, and then a higher GDP equals lower moral value. But also what's interesting is I'll have to look more into the methodology to see like how significant this is, but Nigeria and Pakistan happen to be two countries where the RLHF preference data for ChatGPT models comes from with Scale AI. That's like they source a lot of data labelers from those two countries.
Yes.
So it'll be really interesting if maybe the preferences that those labelers choose end up converging the model to a place that actually ends up valuing those people's lives higher.
Yeah. And also worth shouting out that there's pushback on how the study was conducted and some examples. So I'm showing some with Colin Fraser. So definitely worth adding those to the conversation as well. Not every research that comes out is conclusive, but I think that my theory was that there's so much emails with Nigerian prince, and so maybe it values all the Nigerian people as princes because of the scam. Yeah. And also there's preference improvements or bias in models where they prefer A and Z, etc. as well. So moving on to the last one, I want to highlight this. Shout out to Yigil. Nistan, you seen this? Speculative decoding finally landed in LM Studio, which is dope, folks. If you use LM Studio, if you don't, you should. I want to show you how this looks super quick.
Tweet was, I should have responded because I saw the tweet. We'll let the user speculate what the next feature is going to be.
Yeah.
On LM Studio, I already knew what it was because it was speculative decoding. Yeah. I haven't tried it, so let's see. Yeah.
So let's see how this works. So basically, folks, we should talk about speculative decoding super quick. Folks who follow us already know it's a way to load kind of two models in the memory, one large one. They have to be from the same family, so Qwen 32B and then Qwen 1.5B. Now, for folks who are watching, they can see the LM Studio UI. Now on the right bottom, it's in beta still. You have a drop-down draft model. So in this case, I have the DeepSeek R1 Distill Qwen 32B loaded in my memory, and now the comparable draft model is DeepSeek R1 Distill Qwen 1.5B, right? So 32B parameters and 1.5B parameters. What this does basically, it runs all the inference on the small model first, and then basically gives those tokens to the big model to decide whether or not this is like where it wanted to go anyway. And in this case, because the smaller model runs significantly faster, it would choose those models. The cool thing about this implementation is that they have this checkbox called Visualize Accepted Draft Tokens. And if you say something like, what's bigger number, 9.9 or 9.11? If you ask something like this, and then you send it, you can start saying, I'm using R1 here, so we're going to see the thinking tokens as well. This applies to thinking tokens as well. And you can see visually that most of the green, those are replaced tokens. So the green chunks are tokens that were taken from the draft model. And you can see it's quite a lot of them, right? So this makes it basically run faster. So I let it run. We can see the R1 model thinking, therefore combining both compares, blah, blah, blah. But basically, I compared it, and it runs around 10 tokens per second without the speculative decoding, and around 14 to 15 tokens per second with speculative, which is great.
That's huge, actually.
Yeah, so let me stop and actually...
Also want to say the biggest benefits that come to speculative decoding are more with the pure coding models, the non-reasoning ones. Because when you do speculating on that and you have tasks where it has to, you want to repeat the full file, but just only have a few changes here and there, the speculative model, that's an easy task for it. So in those, the boost can be huge. It can even be twice as fast as before. So it is still beneficial for the reasoning models, but the massive benefits just come from something like QuenCoder 32B or whatever for straight coding models, the benefits are even more massive. But even in this case, the fact that it goes up to 40% faster, that is huge.
Yeah, and I also will say they have flash attention as well, so I can fully offload to GPU, and then hopefully this will not crash my Mac. But yeah, we're loading the DeepSeek R1 Qwen 32B. I just want to show you how fast this model can run on your Mac. So let's start a new chat. What's bigger, 999 or 911? Let's see. And now we'll see it like very fast. Look at this, runs super quick. This is fully offloaded with flash attention. This is a 32 billion parameter like thinker model on my Mac, and then blah blah blah. It shows me all the thinking as well. And then basically, if I stop this, it shows me that it ran at 17 tokens per second with speculative decoding, accepted rate of 62%. So 62% of the tokens that this model was supposed to go went from the 1.5 model and not from the main model. Now, important note also, there's no loss in reasoning here. There's no loss in performance, because if the model wasn't supposed to select those tokens from the small draft model, it wouldn't. So you're not losing anything. You're just like speeding up inference as well.
By the way,
you
yeah,
guys know, Wolfram has done those benchmarks before, right? Very thoroughly.
Yeah, with the Quen 0.5b and even with the Quill 32b, which is a reasoning model, but even there it was a big speed up. Yeah, that is definitely something. If you can do speculative decoding, do it. And
there was no drop in benchmarking. Like even in your own private test, you didn't really see any significant drops in the final score, right?
It should never affect the scoring at all. And it's not what the bigger model would predict. It just gets dropped and discarded and replaced by that. So you get the speed up without the quality loss. You just have to run both models at the same time, so you need more VRAM, but those prediction models are small. And Alex, I see you have temperature 0.8. If you get down to, for example, 0 and try it again, it should have a higher acceptance rate because there's less randomness. I hope so.
Oh,
that
yeah,
would be an interesting experiment.
A bigger number
for ThursdAI.
Or 911. All right, this is the last test, and we're going to go off. But yeah, acceptance rate of 60% is pretty cool. It looks around the same area, right? But we'll see. But basically, folks, I'm running... On my Mac, I'm running the R132B at 17 tokens per second now with this speculative. No, I just absolutely love this. 17 tokens per second is way usable. You can add this. They have a server as well, so you can add this in Cursor. 16.15 and around 60% acceptance rates. So basically, we can see how the bigger model performs compared to a small model. So shout out to Gil and shout out to Elm Studio. We absolutely love you guys. Should all use Elm Studio locally for your stuff. And I think with this, folks, we finally made it. We finally made it to the end of Thursday. I want to say thank you for everybody who joined. I want to say thank you to Zach Nussbaum, who joined from Nomic and talked to us about MOE models. I want to say thank you to Vu. I apologize. Sorry. Yeah. Vuka Chan, I believe. Butchering your name. I'm so sorry, man.
Yeah, he said it's fine to just call him Vu.
So, Vu, thank you for joining and talking to us about evaluations of the DeepSeeker model as well. Obviously, huge thanks to Wolfram, Nisten, and LDJ for helping me co-host this space, as always. If you're listening on the Twitter Spaces, huge thanks to the WNB Weave, which sponsors the show every week. That you can, which means that you can come in and listen with us, and we stay up to date, so you don't have to. So you can always know that if there's anything important in AI, but you took a week off, we are here for you. If you missed any part of the show, we're always available on everywhere where you get your podcast. We have a 5-star rating. We have a few responses as well. One of them is Nisten. So don't leave him hanging there. Don't let Nisten be bored there in the comment section, in the review section of our podcast. Go join him and give us a response as well. The best way to support the show is to give us comments. We don't take sponsors. And then also give us comments and 5-star ratings as well. And come back and tell a friend. Tell a friend, because we need more discovery as well. With this, it feels like the next weeks are going to be crazy, and we're going to be here covering this. I personally will be next week in New York. Expect a special edition of ThursdAI from AI Engineer Floor. Probably I'm going to walk around, like interview some folks as well. And then the next weekend in Toronto, so maybe we'll record something quick for you. With this, have a great week, everyone. Enjoy ThursdAI. As always, if you missed any part of the show, there's going to be a newsletter with all the links and the things we talked about, and a podcast coming up later. Cheers, everyone. Bye-bye.
Cheers.